Disclaimer: this story is a work of fiction, created purely for entertainment purposes. It explores themes of love, temptation, and infidelity, but it does not promote or encourage unfaithfulness in real life. Any resemblance to actual people, places, or events is purely coincidental. Viewer discretion is advised as the story deals with sensitive emotional issues. It started as just another ordinary evening. My best friend, Melissa, had invited a few of us over for dinner at her house. The night was filled with laughter, the clinking of wine glasses, and the smell of roasted chicken and garlic bread drifting through the kitchen. We had spent hours around the dining table, sharing stories about work, family, and everything in between. Melissa, radiant as always, kept us entertained with her jokes, while her husband, Daniel, quietly played the role of the gracious host, refilling glasses, cleaning plates, and making sure everyone was comfortable. By the time the evening wound down, it was already close to midnight. Most of the guests had left, and I realized I didn't have my car with me. My brother had borrowed it for the weekend, leaving me with no way home. Melissa offered to let me stay the night, but I had an early shift at work the next day, and I just wanted the comfort of my own bed. That's when Daniel spoke up. "I can drop you home," he said casually, as if it were nothing. "It's on my way." At first, I hesitated. Accepting a ride from my best friend's husband felt unusual. But the streets were quiet, and it was late. Melissa smiled and encouraged me to go ahead, saying, "He's practically a taxi service anyway." We all laughed, and before I knew it, I was sliding into the passenger seat of his dark blue sedan. The moment we pulled out of the driveway, the atmosphere shifted. Gone was the lively chatter of the dinner table, replaced by the low hum of the engine and the soft crackle of the radio. The roads were nearly empty, illuminated only by the glow of streetlights and the occasional flicker of neon signs from late-night stores. At first, it felt like any other car ride. I looked out the window, watching the blur of trees and sidewalks pass by. But then, I became acutely aware of the silence. Daniel wasn't much of a talker, but the quiet felt heavier than usual, as though it carried something unspoken between us. Every so often, I'd catch him glancing at me in the rearview mirror, his eyes quickly darting away when he realized I noticed. I told myself I was overthinking it, that it was just an innocent ride home. Still, my heart beat a little faster, my palms pressing nervously against my lap. I shifted in my seat, trying to brush off the strange tension. But no matter how much I tried to convince myself, something about that drive didn't feel ordinary. That night, what began as a simple favor, just a ride home, was about to become the beginning of something I never expected. The ride stretched on longer than I thought it would. It wasn't the distance. My apartment was only 15 minutes away, but the silence made every second feel heavier. The soft hum of the engine filled the car, broken only by the occasional swoosh of another vehicle passing us on the dimly lit road. I kept my eyes fixed on the window, watching the rows of houses blur by, but I could feel his presence beside me more than I should have. Daniel wasn't a man of many words, at least not in social settings. He had always been polite, attentive, the type who stayed in the background while Melissa shined. I'd never paid him much attention, except to notice how steady and dependable he seemed. Yet tonight, something about his silence felt different. Not awkward, not uncomfortable, but charged, like the air before a thunderstorm. I stole a quick glance at him. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles pale in the glow of the dashboard. His jaw was tense, and though his eyes were focused on the road, I caught the faintest flicker of a glance in my direction. I turned back to the window quickly, heat rising in my cheeks. Why was I suddenly so nervous? This was Melissa's husband, the man I'd known for years, the man who'd hosted countless barbecues and helped me fix my leaky faucet last summer. He had always been kind, respectful. But sitting there in the silence, with nothing but the night stretching out ahead of us, I began to notice things I'd never noticed before. The way his cologne lingered faintly in the air, the steady rhythm of his breathing, the quiet strength in his posture. The silence was suffocating. I felt compelled to break it. "Thank you for driving me," I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper. His lips curved into a small smile. Of course, it's no trouble. His voice was low, steady, but there was something in the tone that made my stomach tighten. After that, we lapsed back into quiet again. But it wasn't the kind of silence you shared with strangers. It was intimate, almost too intimate, like there were words hanging in the air that neither of us dared to speak. Each passing moment made me more aware of it, more aware of him. At one point, the streetlight above flickered, casting shadows across the car. For a split second, the light revealed his face turned slightly toward me, his gaze lingering longer than it should have. My breath caught, and I quickly shifted in my seat, pretending not to notice. But my heart was beating so fast, I was sure he could hear it. It was such a simple thing, a car ride, a quiet drive home. Yet in that silence, something had shifted between us. Something I didn't understand, something I wasn't ready to admit. And deep down, I knew. This silence wasn't just empty space. It was the beginning of a conversation neither of us were brave enough to start. Eventually, the silence became too much to bear. I needed to say something, anything, to ease the strange heaviness in the air. "So, how's work been?" I asked, my voice light, casual, as if we were just two friends making small talk. Daniel chuckled softly, a sound that was deeper than I expected. "Busy," he replied, his eyes still fixed on the road. "Always busy. But you probably know that already. Melissa talks about it enough." I smiled faintly, though his words carried a weight I couldn't ignore. "Yeah, she does. She always says how hard you work for the family." He let out a long breath, almost like a sigh. "Sometimes I wonder if she realizes how much I do, or if she even notices me at all." His honesty startled me. I shifted in my seat, unsure of how to respond. "Of course she notices," I said quickly, though my words felt thin. "You're her husband. Of course she cares." Daniel glanced at me briefly, his eyes catching mine for just a second before flicking back to the road. "Caring isn't the same as seeing," he murmured. "It's different when someone really sees you. Do you know what I mean?" My heart stumbled in my chest. I did know. Too well. There had been times in my own relationships when I felt invisible, when I longed for someone to notice the little things, the way my mood shifted, the way my laughter sometimes covered sadness. And now, here he was, Melissa's husband, voicing the very ache I had once carried. "I think I understand," I said softly. That opened the door to more. What began as harmless small talk slipped quickly into something deeper, something far too intimate for the short drive we were supposed to share. He told me about how lonely he sometimes felt in his own marriage, how Melissa was always surrounded by friends, always busy, always shining in the spotlight, while he faded quietly into the background. And I listened. I shouldn't have, but I did, because every word he spoke tugged at something inside me. I felt drawn in by his vulnerability, by the rawness of what he was confessing. He wasn't just Melissa's husband in that moment. He was a man, flawed and hurting, craving to be understood. "I guess we all want to feel seen," I whispered, my voice trembling slightly. When I turned to look at him, his eyes weren't on the road. They were on me, and the look he gave me made my breath hitch in my throat. It wasn't a look of friendship. It wasn't casual. It was the kind of look that said things words couldn't. I tore my gaze away, staring hard at the streetlights rushing past. My chest felt tight. I knew this was dangerous, that this conversation was unraveling boundaries we should never cross. But in that moment, I didn't stop it. Couldn't, because some part of me wanted to be seen too. The drive should have been over by then. My apartment was only a few blocks away, yet Daniel slowed down as if he was in no hurry to reach the destination. I noticed it, but I didn't say a word. My pulse was racing too fast, my thoughts too tangled. The air between us was thick with everything we hadn't said. And then, he broke it. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice low, almost hesitant. I turned toward him, my hands clutching my purse tightly. His eyes stayed on the road, but I could feel the weight of his words before they even left his mouth. "I've always admired you," he said finally. "Not just as Melissa's best friend. As you." The words hit me like a jolt of electricity. My breath caught in my throat, and for a second, I forgot how to breathe. I blinked, unsure if I had even heard him correctly. "Daniel?" I started, my voice cracking. He glanced at me quickly, then back at the road. "I know I shouldn't say this. I know it's wrong. But I can't keep pretending. You're different. Whenever you're around, it feels like someone finally understands me." My heart pounded so loudly I was sure he could hear it. I should have stopped him, told him this conversation had gone too far. But instead, I sat frozen, torn between shock, guilt, and something I didn't want to admit: flattery. I swallowed hard. "You can't say things like that, Daniel. Melissa is my best friend." "I know," he said quickly, almost desperately, "and I would never want to hurt her. But sometimes, feelings don't care about boundaries. Sometimes they just happen." His honesty was dangerous. Cracked something inside me I had worked so hard to keep sealed. For years, I had been the loyal best friend, the supportive confidant. Never once had I looked at Daniel in that way. But now, sitting there in the dim light of his car, hearing his voice trembling with sincerity, I couldn't deny the tiny spark that flickered inside me. I shook my head, trying to ground myself. "This isn't fair," I whispered. "Not to her. Not to me." His hands gripped the steering wheel tighter. "You're right, but I had to tell you. Even if nothing ever happens, I needed you to know." We fell into silence again, but this time, it wasn't empty. It was heavy with his confession, heavy with the weight of a truth we could never take back. My apartment building came into view, glowing faintly under the streetlight. Relief washed over me, yet disappointment lurked in the shadows of my heart. Because as much as I wanted to deny it, his words had stirred something deep inside me. Something I couldn't ignore, no matter how wrong it was. That night, the ride home didn't just end at my doorstep. It left me carrying a secret I didn't ask for, but one I would never forget. When the car rolled to a stop in front of my apartment building, I expected relief, an escape from the storm of emotions swirling inside me. Instead, the stillness of the parked car only amplified the tension. The engine hummed softly, headlights glowing against the brick walls, but neither of us moved to end the night. I unfastened my seatbelt, fingers trembling slightly. "Thank you for the ride," I whispered, my voice almost too quiet to hear. I reached for the door handle, but his voice stopped me. "Wait." I froze, turning slowly toward him. His face was half-shadowed by the dim streetlight, but his eyes told me everything. They carried a longing I had never expected to see directed at me, not from him. "This shouldn't have happened," I said quickly, words spilling out in a rush, as if saying them could erase everything from the past 15 minutes. "You shouldn't have told me that." "I know," he admitted. His hand tightened on the steering wheel before loosening again, as if he was wrestling with himself. "But I can't take it back. And I don't regret saying it." My chest ached with the weight of his words. I wanted to deny him, to end this before it spiraled further. But when his hand moved, slowly, cautiously, resting lightly over mine, I didn't pull away. That single touch sent a current through me, one I hated myself for craving. His skin was warm, his touch tentative, as though he was giving me every chance to withdraw. But I didn't. I sat there, paralyzed, torn between loyalty and temptation. "Daniel?" I whispered again, my voice shaking. "This is wrong." "I know," he said softly. "But does it feel wrong?" My breath hitched, because the truth was it didn't. Not in that moment. Felt intoxicating, dangerous, but real. It was a kind of attention I hadn't felt in years. Like someone was truly seeing me, wanting me. For a second that stretched endlessly, we stayed like that, hands touching, hearts racing, eyes locked in a silent battle between restraint and desire. The world outside blurred away. There was only him, only me, only the heavy silence pressing us closer. Then, as quickly as it started, I pulled my hand back, breaking the fragile connection. My pulse hammered in my ears. "I can't," I said firmly, forcing strength into my voice even as my heart wavered. He leaned back, exhaling deeply, like he had been holding his breath. "I'm sorry," he murmured. I crossed a line. I shook my head, blinking back the storm inside me. We both did. When I finally stepped out of the car, the night air was cold against my flushed skin. I didn't look back as I walked to my building, but I felt his gaze lingering, heavy, almost pleading. That night, nothing physical had truly happened. No kiss, no embrace. But the line had been crossed nonetheless. And sometimes the most dangerous betrayals aren't the ones we act on, but the ones we almost do. The next morning, I woke up with the echo of last night still clinging to me. I told myself to shake it off, to bury it in the shadows of my memory, but it was impossible. Every detail replayed in my mind. The silence in the car, his confession, the warmth of his hand over mine. It was supposed to be nothing, just a ride home. Yet it had become the heaviest secret I had ever carried. At work, I struggled to focus. The computer screen blurred as my mind wandered back to him. Guilt gnawed at me, sharp and unrelenting. Melissa's face flashed before me. Her laughter, her trust, the way she called me her sister. How could I even allow my thoughts to stray toward her husband? It was betrayal in its purest form, even if nothing physical had happened. And yet, alongside the guilt, there was something else. A pull. A temptation that grew stronger every time I remembered his words. Does it feel wrong? The truth haunted me. It didn't feel wrong. It felt like a dangerous kind of right. An acknowledgement of a loneliness I hadn't admitted to anyone. For years, I had been the dependable one, the listener, the friend who carried others' burdens. But when Daniel looked at me, when he spoke to me that night, I felt something I hadn't in a long time seen. The days that followed were a blur of internal conflict. Whenever Melissa texted me, simple things like "let's grab lunch" or "movie night soon," my stomach twisted. She had no idea of the weight I was hiding. And worse, I couldn't look her in the eye without remembering her husband's gaze on me. Then there was Daniel himself. He didn't call, didn't message, but when I visited their house the following weekend for another small gathering, the tension was undeniable. Our eyes met across the room, and in that split second, everything came rushing back. His smile for me lingered just a little longer than it should have. His laughter seemed to deepen when I was near. Melissa, ever the perfect host, noticed nothing. But I felt it. Every stolen glance, every unspoken word. It was unbearable. The more I tried to fight it, the heavier the temptation grew. I started to wonder what would have happened if I hadn't pulled my hand away that night. Would he have leaned closer? Would I have let him? The questions burned in my mind, filling the quiet moments with fantasies I hated myself for having. At night, lying awake in my bed, I would whisper to myself, "You can't do this. You can't betray her." But my heart didn't listen. It clung to the memory of his voice, the vulnerability in his confession, the feeling of being wanted. Temptation is a strange thing. It doesn't shout. It whispers. It seeps in slowly, wrapping itself around you until it becomes harder and harder to let go. And by then, even if you haven't fallen, you're already teetering on the edge. And I was standing right at the edge, terrified of what one more step could mean. By the time another week passed, I knew I couldn't keep living in the haze of temptation. It was eating at me, gnawing at my conscience every waking hour. I couldn't look Melissa in the eyes without hearing Daniel's voice in the back of my mind. I couldn't sit in a room with both of them without feeling like I was suffocating under the weight of what wasn't being said. The breaking point came on a rainy Thursday evening. Melissa had invited me over for dinner, but she was delayed at work and texted that she'd be late. "Daniel's already home," she added casually. "You two can start without me." I froze when I read the message. 1,000 alarms went off inside me. This was it, the exact kind of situation I had been terrified of. I could have made an excuse, said I wasn't feeling well, or claimed I'd be late myself. But against my better judgment, I found myself driving to their house, heart pounding, knowing I was walking straight into the storm. When Daniel opened the door, surprise flickered in his eyes before it softened into something I recognized too well. "She told me you'd be coming," he said, stepping aside. His voice carried no pretense, no casual tone. It was heavy, like he knew exactly how dangerous this was. We sat in the living room, the rain pattering against the windows, silence stretching between us. Finally, he spoke. I haven't stopped thinking about that night. My breath caught. I should have stopped him, shut it down immediately. But instead, I whispered, "Neither have I." The moment the words left my mouth, I knew everything had changed. There was no more pretending, no more hiding behind excuses. The truth was out now, hanging between us like a blade. He leaned forward, his voice low. "We can't keep doing this. Pretending like nothing's there. It's tearing me apart." Tears stung my eyes. "But what about Melissa? She trusts us. She trusts me." "I know," he said, his voice breaking. "And I love her, I do. But what I feel when I'm with you, I can't ignore it anymore. Can you?" It was the unthinkable choice, staring me in the face. On one side was loyalty, the bond of years of friendship, the promise I had made silently to stand by Melissa no matter what. On the other side was temptation, desire, and the raw, undeniable pull I felt toward Daniel. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But instead, I sat there in the dim light of their living room, trembling, my heart betraying me with every beat. Because the truth was, I didn't know if I could ignore it anymore. And admitting that, even to myself, was the most dangerous step of all. The sound of keys jangling at the front door made us both snap to attention. Melissa's cheerful voice called out, "I'm home." And just like that, the choice was ripped from me, for now. Melissa's voice filled the house with its usual warmth, and in an instant, the spell between Daniel and me shattered. We sprang apart as though guilty children caught with our hands in the cookie jar, though technically, nothing had happened. Nothing but everything. I forced a smile as she entered the room, shaking off the rain from her coat. "You two didn't start without me, did you?" She laughed, her eyes darting between us with the ease of someone who had no reason to suspect anything. "No, of course not," I said quickly, my voice just a touch too bright. My hands trembled as I smoothed my hair back, trying to disguise the storm raging inside me. Dinner that night was unbearable. Melissa chatted happily, recounting stories from her day, while Daniel and I exchanged brief, stolen glances that carried 1,000 unspoken words. Every smile I forced, every laugh I faked, felt like betrayal dripping from my lips. Melissa trusted me with her secrets, with her life, with her marriage. And there I was, sitting across from her husband, carrying a secret that could destroy it all. When the night finally ended and I returned home, I collapsed onto my bed, staring up at the ceiling. My body was exhausted, but my mind refused to rest. I replayed every moment of that evening, from Daniel's confession to the near disaster of Melissa's sudden arrival. The guilt clawed at me relentlessly, but beneath it all, the ache of temptation still pulsed, relentless and alive. I realized then that this wasn't something that would simply fade away. A line had been crossed, subtly, silently, but undeniably. Even if Daniel and I never touched, never kissed, never acted further on the feelings we both knew were there, the damage had already been done. My friendship with Melissa was no longer the same, though she had no idea why. And my own heart, it carried a secret I could never confess. Days turned into weeks, and though life outwardly continued as normal, the tension remained. Whenever Melissa invited me over, I felt a pang of dread. Whenever Daniel and I accidentally locked eyes, I felt the old spark flare up, dangerous and unbidden. It was a cycle I couldn't escape. The aftermath wasn't a dramatic explosion or a scandalous affair. It was quieter, subtler, an invisible weight pressing down on me every single day. The worst part was knowing that temptation didn't always need to be acted upon to ruin lives. Sometimes it was enough just to exist, to linger in the shadows of what could have been. In the end, the real betrayal wasn't in what happened that night. It was in what almost happened, and in the secret longing that lived on afterward. And that's the part of the story that still haunts me, because even now I sometimes wonder, if Melissa hadn't walked through that door when she did, would I have made the unthinkable choice? The truth is, I'll never know. And maybe that's what makes the memory linger the most. 50.